Acknowledge our secretary, Secretary Ana Nogales.
Yes, we're giving a shout out to Ana Nogales and our founder, national and international founder, Nora Roberts. Oh my God, Nora Comstock, who's here.
This Nora does not write.
So, welcome, Comadres. I am Maria Ferrer, Director of Programs and Coordinator of Las Comadres monthly speaker series with Eileen Roberta Schleff. Our goal is to inspire and motivate our comadres by sharing the stories of amazing Latinas who are heralded in a variety of professions. Each speaker offers practical insights and recommendations. They share with us their lives, challenges, and achievements in a very personal way. We're chronicling Latina lives, saving the interviews on our YouTube channel, which we will announce shortly. Before we start, I ask that everyone please put yourselves on mute. If you have any questions, comments, please add them to the chat and we will try to get to them at the end. Now, please help me welcome our comadre, Dr. Lourdes J. Rodriguez, who is the new David Rockefeller Fund Chief Executive Officer. Lourdes was the Senior Program Officer for the St. David's Foundation, and before that served as an Associate Professor and Director of Community-Driven Initiatives at the Dell Medical School of the University of Texas in Austin. In these positions, she has been dedicated to developing and evaluating initiatives that resolve the continuing health inequities that affect our communities and families. Dr. Lourdes holds a doctorate in public health from Columbia University, a master's of public health from the University of Connecticut, and a Bachelor of Science in Industrial Biotechnology from the University of Puerto Rico at Mayagüez. Interviewing Dr. Lourdes tonight is Comadre Eileen Roberta Schleff. Eileen?
Good evening, everyone. We're so proud to offer this Comadre speaker series by showcasing Latinas in diverse leadership positions. We are creating a footprint of the Latina experience in this country. And I'm admitting people right now.
Don't worry about admitting them. I will do that.
Okay, thank you. You're about to experience a national trendsetter who's an inspiration to all of us as she forges new territory. Lourdes, we'd like to begin by congratulating you on your new position. We usually start our conversation by learning a little bit about your family's history, your stories that you want to share, as well as your education and career pursuits. Were they planned or did they evolve? Today, you're a wife and mother of 3 active children. I think they're teenagers, and you've crafted an impactful career path. To begin with, how did your childhood inform and prepare you? Did your family encourage you to explore and test the waters? Or were you a kid with a lot of moxie? And who were your childhood heroes? Lourdes, take it from here.
So first of all, I need to put a warning. I would put a label in the middle of the screen that says prone to cry, because I get emotional, even with like car commercials. I will just like get really emotional. So let me just start by acknowledging that, because this is such a special moment to be here among my comadres who over the past 6 years have like been the wind beneath my wings, so to speak, right? Like being connected to the comadres here in Austin through Nora, my neighbor and friend, has been amazing. So I just want to start by acknowledging that. And I have to start the story of my childhood with the story of my mother's childhood. My mom, Luz Maria Cordero Gonzalez de Hernandez, because, you know, although I will tell you that she never changed her last name, so she's just Lucy Cordero. So she was a kid with moxie. She is one of 11 siblings. And growing up, she was very curious and excited about learning. And when she reached 6th grade, her mom, my abuela, told her that that the only thing that girls needed to know was to read and do their math, and that was the end of their education. And she pulled her out of school. They grew. My family comes from the mountain area of Puerto Rico in the center of the island. So she pulled her out of school and said, any investment in your education is only going to benefit your husband. So, you know, I need you here at the farm. So that was devastating to my mom, who would see her friends going to school, and you know, she would be asked by her friends, by her former schoolmates, you know, why aren't you showing up to her school? So she didn't want to speak ill of her mother. So she just said she was just not interested, but she had this hunger for learning. So the story of my childhood is linked to hers, because the moment I have my earliest childhood memories is the moment of my mom braiding my hair and saying to me, when you're done with your high school, you're going to go to college. And after you go to college, you're going to go get your master's like your daddy. She used to say, primero el máster y después el mister. Like first you get your master's and then you get your mister. And because I did not have a chance to give you an education, I don't have a chance to give you an inheritance. The only inheritance I can give you is your education. So that my childhood was always the childhood of normalizing education in general, but higher education as like the thing that you're going to do. But, you know, having said that, like I come from a family that is huge. So 12, you know, siblings on my mom's side of the family, 11 on my dad's side of the family, cousins coming out of like every corner, right? So 30 something on one side, 30 something on the other. And in that family, we have a little bit of everything. We have a stay-at-home moms and stay-at-home dads, and we have farmers and truck drivers and engineers and accountants. We have a little bit of everything. So my childhood is also the childhood of growing up with being expected to treat everybody with the same respect, regardless of their level of education, their job, the color of the skin, because we come in all sorts of colors and shades and complexions. There was an expectation that we would grow up treating everybody, you know, with the same level of respect. And because I have cousins that are old enough to be my parents and cousins that are young enough to be my kids, if I had been a teen mom, there was always people around older than you to interact with you, right? Like those early years, early childhood experiences were always surrounded with people who would be willing to listen to you, talk to you. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with the saying, right? But there's this saying that los niños hablan cuando las gallinas mean, right? Like the kids should be seen and not heard. That's a more polished translation than the actual in Spanish, but you get the gist, right? So there's a lot of that. There was a lot of that growing up, but within my family and the extended family, there was always somebody that would listen to you and entertain you and answer your questions. So this idea that within the family and within the extended community, there was always that interaction. I would say that also shaped my childhood. So it wasn't so much about like people saying like you should explore your interest. It was part of the environment, so to speak. I hope that answers your question.
You did, and I was thinking there would be outside heroes from TV or something. That's awesome. I love to hear when families really support their young people. Before we turn to your current position, when I read your bio, I saw threads that seem to weave throughout your career, and I hope I'm correct. Creating community conditions that are needed to reverse poor maternal mortality and mobility outcomes. And that's been a critical issue for Latinas since I can remember. Empowering communities and helping them focus on their own needs and goals. And then having a voice at the table to make sure that these programs are sufficiently funded and appropriate to support Latino needs. Is this so? And please tell us.
It is very much so. And so much so that I thought that's how the whole world functioned. And I had a rude awakening when I arrived at Columbia University to work on my doctorate, but that's a whole nother story. What I will tell you is that growing up in a working class neighborhood in Puerto Rico, there was this habit, this ethos of neighbors helping neighbors, right? Like whenever my uncle would come from the farm and go to the metro area where we lived every Monday morning, right? Because he would like spend the weekend at the farm, he would bring a huge truckload of produce. And the first thing that my mom would do would be to like separate little bits of plátanos and chinas and like whatever was in season. And then she would send my siblings and I have an older brother and a younger sister, toma, llévale eso a Doña Carmen. Go take this to our neighbor next door, go take this to the neighbor. And in moments of crisis, you know, we lean on each other because we knew each other, right? So I thought that's how the whole world functioned.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I have to acknowledge is that like I grew up in a very different Catholic church than the one that we have in the continental US. So in the Catholic Church, as it evolved in Latin America and in the Caribbean, was a church of action, right? Like faith is a verb, like Ricardo Arjona says, Jesús es verbo, no sustantivo, right? Like the faith is in action. So there was that message also being reinforced in the Franciscan parish that I was a part of. And then by the time I got to college, I was already primed to start thinking about not so much like every woman or man, you know, pull up yourself by your bootstraps, but rather that like you worked in community, you live in community, you love in community, and that's what sustains you, and that's what keeps you healthy, and that's what like helps solve problems, right? And that's rather than letting that be beaten out of me as I went through my formal training, like I brought that with me and I layered the formal training on top of that base, if that makes sense.
No, you brought an incredible context for not only your story, but where we as a nation are trying to go at this point. So you've just assumed, I think it's a month ago, the role of the Chief Executive Officer of the David Rockefeller Fund, yes?
Well, officially 30 days ago, because the month of October was only like part-time onboarding. And I want to give a big shout out to my comadre, Lexi Fisher, who's in the Zoom room tonight.
Yes.
So yeah.
So the fund announced, I did some research on the fund, and they announced that they're moving through a generational shift of their priorities and their direction. And they're very intentional about making a difference. And that, as I wrote you, made my 60s activist heart jump for joy. And Marta Cotera's on this too. And we were active at the same time in this. So they've established 3 primary program areas: climate, justice, and art and culture. They speak of grassroots organizing, power building, and effective advocacy efforts. What an incredible time and place for you. So what are the first steps you're taking in your beginning weeks at this position?
So first of all, huge shout out to see Comadre Marta Cotera here in the room. I'm like blushing. Thank you so much for being here. And so many other comadres. I saw Andrea and I DM'd her, and also great to see new faces. And I hope that we can connect moving forward. So the way that the position was described during the search was that the fund wanted to become a more just, equitable, and diverse funder. And you know, part of that means doing some self-reflection of the work that's been done to date, of doing what I call the, you know, cupboard philanthropy, or like pantry philanthropy, looking at like every cupboard and like look at everything that you have, from your endowment and how it's invested to the name of the family, and how do you like shamelessly use the name in service of the mission and the work, to like just digging at like who are the types of grantees, how long do we fund for. So my first you know 30 days in the job have been about learning what does the world currently look like for the David Rockefeller Fund. And I have to say, I learned that part of transition, you have to create the planning, the plan for learning, right? So I have my 30, 60, 90, transition plan that I am following religiously. And also that, for me, this was an opportunity to bring the new board members. These are, folks that are fifth generation Rockefeller family members. They are the grandkids of our founder, David Rockefeller. And, part of what they have, the reason for the DR Fund to have been created was create an opportunity for the family to come together in service, right? So for me, one of my first tasks is learn, what does that mean for the current family members that are serving on the board? What does it mean for the folks that have finished their service on the board, but that are still influential to the work? And how do I recruit, enlist, mobilize, find allies in the family, so that as we become a more just, equitable, and diverse funder, it's not just about what Lourdes is doing, because when Lourdes leaves, if it's only about me, then the work is not transformational, right? The work is just about like an individual. So the first call, the first order of business, so to speak, is to do learning about how are we doing our work currently, and to facilitate that. One of the things that I asked the board for approval, and thankfully they said yes, was to do what we're calling a continuing resolution. That means that we are, for our budget for 2023, we're just going to refund all of our grantees from 2022. We're going to make it easy for them to submit their check-in reports when we do those, and to use those as the basis for a proposal. One, because I trust that the team that was in place and the amazing woman that was in the interim role of CEO, like I trust that they did all the due diligence, right? And by doing that, we are clearing space, right, in our plate to be able to not only Lourdes does the heavy lifting of thinking and strategizing, but that my team can also participate on that. Does that answer your question, Eileen?
Yes, indeed. Because I had a similar position many decades ago, and you're treading carefully, and you have to really, really bring everyone along with you. So that's wonderful. We had a question like, will you be ramping up Latino engagement, hiring, grant funding? Is that part of the picture, and also other communities that I consider invisible communities in the United States?
Well, first of all, I'm glad that you brought the word invisible into the room, because one of the things that I said throughout the interview process was that I wanted to lift the invisibility cloak of populations that currently are the ones most impacted by the three areas that we support, that are not part of the funding dockets, that are not, more importantly, that are not in leadership positions to inform the work and moving forward. So definitely working to remove that invisibility cloak is going to be really important. I will tell you that of the staff of 3, 2 of us are Latinas. So, and it's a very small organization. So I will tell you that right now there is no like hiring, no like doing any, not growing as an organization. However, we, just 2 days ago became members of Hispanics in Philanthropy, which is a national organization that helps inform the field. And we're looking for one of the things that we have to do this year. And I'm going to look at Lexi, and she can you can shake your ear. I don't think that we currently disaggregate the data by race, ethnicity of the populations that are served. All right, so there you go. We have not done that yet. So part of the learning is going to be, let's look at the leadership of the organizations that we fund, the composition of the board, what's the stance to the work, which I think is even more important, right? Like, are you coming to the work with a, I call it the Mighty Mouse stand, like, here I come to save the day. Because if that's how you're coming to the work, we need to have a conversation, right? Or are you coming to the work in solidarity? So it's not only about having numbers that look pretty, that reflect more Latinos in hand, is significant approaches to the work that see the people that we serve as allies, as folks that inform the direction of the work, as folks that we want to create pipelines for entry into decision-making positions that currently they don't have access to. So the answer is yes. That was a long way to answer that question.
No, that was really great. Thank you. And stepping away from the internal workings of the fund, you're in a position to transform traditional philanthropy. And when I left New York about 10 or 15 years ago, we couldn't even get through the front door in most of the foundations. And I say, as the author of a 1977 article for Nuestro about Latinos getting breadcrumbs from the buffet table of philanthropy. Yeah. How are we going to do it better? And what do you think has to be done in the philanthropic community?
So I be outside of philanthropy, I had this group when I was a faculty member at Columbia University, called the 5+1 Club. And I like to describe it as a secret society of women of color, right? So there were Latinas, there were African-American women, there was a little bit of everything there, right? And the reason why we were called the 5+1 Club was that our goal was that everybody in our network in 5 years will be one step further in their career. Right. And this included, at the time, I was a junior faculty member. It included senior faculty members, staff, students, masters and doctoral level students. We did not discriminate into who could be part of our 5+1 Club. And we did all of the things that people do to create opportunities, not only for themselves, but for others. Right. So if there was a letter of.
Wait a second.
Okay, there you go. Can you hear me now?
Got you now. I wonder what happened.
So we created opportunities not only for ourselves, but for others. If there was a job that was posted, we would be the first ones to say, I'm in the search committee for XYZ. Who do you know that we could nominate or that we could invite? I would write letters of recommendation for students, and I write really good letters of recommendation, all modesty aside. Okay. And if I needed to have a meeting with the dean, I would go over to his assistant and be like, I need a meeting with the dean. And she'd be like, I got you, girl. Right. And the CC was our secret sign that meant Conquer Columbia. So that is one way of being, right? I cannot shed that off of me as I'm stepping into this new role. So on a very, very personal level, that is one of the things that I'm doing. And Nora knows that I flood her inbox every time a job opportunity comes across my desk. I will either directly send it to somebody or I'll send it to Nora to send out. The other bit is that there are other leaders in philanthropy that I respect and admire, but for the grace of God, as they say, but also by the love and support of Jacqueline Martinez Garcel, may she be blessed in the Bay Area where she is right now. She is the woman who brought me to philanthropy, right? So I feel like I have in her a peer. She's now the CEO of the Latino Community Foundation in San Francisco. And like, she is somebody that is working to disrupt the way that philanthropy is done, using giving circles and organizing pathways for getting funding to communities most impacted in a way that builds power, right? So it's not just handouts, it's not just like, let me help the little people, this is power building. And you know, like I mentioned, like Hispanics in Philanthropy is an organization that we joined as an organization, and their president, Ana Marie Arguilagos, is a really a really visionary leader that I think, Eileen, you can attest to, like the changes that she's done recently. So
Yes.
so those are the different ways in which I think I can operate in service of getting more Latinas.
Well, I think in your role at the David Rockefeller Fund, you will be a standard bearer and a role model for a lot of these groups that have been slugs in the process.
Yes, and if I am the standard bearer, my friend, my comadre, my dear comadre, and all of you inside the Zoom room, y'all are my accountability partners. Because if my head ever gets bigger than my shoulders, you are authorized to smack me in the back of the head and say, like, did you forget? Did you forget? Oh, that's all you have to say. Did you forget? So standard bearer, yes, I will do it with humbleness. But if I ever forget, y'all can call me out on it.
And we're really talking about social change. So this is very exciting.
Yes. Because, you know, why do something easy, right, Eileen?
No. So tonight we're a really diverse group around this Zoom table. But we'd love to have benefit from your practical wisdom, your insights, and any recommendations. So I have questions that I will ask you one by one. As the CEO, how will you keep your boots on the ground? Because one of the greatest parts of your career path have been that you've really had an incredible connection to what people need on the ground. And too often people in the corporate office get separated.
Yeah. So one of the first things that one of my mentors said to me, and she's not only a mentor, she's one of my board members. She said, find yourself a project in your neighborhood, in your community, in your city, that puts you in contact directly with like your community. Like go, if you're not currently working on something, go and like volunteer, be the one who folds the tables and chairs at the end of the event, like do something where you're like have to roll your sleeves and get dirty. So that's one of the things that I'm doing. The other thing that I'm doing is that I am looking to not only, set up formal conversations with grantees, but I want to be able to participate and be with them when they have events and activities and their programming. Like I want to come along and participate. And I know that can be kind of tricky because people, the moment you step in, sometimes what people see is the title, but my goal is to assuage people that my presence is not about like evaluating. You don't have to put a dog and pony show for me. And that's why, like, instead of organizing site visits, I want to participate in the programming that they do so that I can learn alongside the people who they work with. And I'm always taking on recommendations. So if any of y'all have advice of like places to go, people to see, things to do, to keep me that connected with my ear to the ground, they will be well received.
Gracias. We had a question. how will you be, you've had such an incredible impact on public health and maternal and child care. Are you going to be able to weave that rich experience into the David Rockefeller Fund's priorities and programs?
So I will start by saying that because we're in a learning year, I don't wanna tell you these are the answers that I'm looking for, and then get my way to end to the answers that I already think I'm gonna get, right? So, but what I can tell you is that in the spirit of removing that invisibility cloak, I will ask questions that help me identify where the populations that are most impacted, like where are they being served and how are they being served, right? So for example, here in Austin, one of the grantees that we supported through the St. David's Foundation, it's a doula, community doula organization called Giving Austin Labor Support. They work directly with women who are incarcerated, who sometimes have to give birth while in prison, right? We fund criminal justice reform. I'm gonna call up my girlfriends at Gals and be like, tell me more about how this problem is being solved, not only locally with the work that you do, but nationally, right? So part of the work is to identify ways in which we can we can lift that invisibility cloak and identify the populations, right? The other thing, Eileen, is that oftentimes the conditions that lead to poor, in the case of the work that I just wrapped up, that lead to poor maternal mortality and morbidity outcomes are the same conditions that lead to, insert here, access of vulnerability that people are experiencing, right? Are the same conditions that create pathways for people to enter the criminal justice system, are the same conditions that lead to people living in climate, in areas that are prone to climate disasters, right? Are the same ones that drive, the climate refugees that are already starting to come, and that we're just not naming them that. We haven't been calling them what they are. So I try to stay away from labels that are really constraining. So yes, I worked in support of reducing maternal mortality and morbidity, but really, if you look at my track record, the specific characteristics of the population are less important. The things that are in common across all of my work is working with people experiencing vulnerability. In the case of the job that I just wrapped up at St. David's, it was within the context of women's health. Before that, when I was at the New York State Health Foundation, it was working in neighborhoods that have little access to affordable, nutritious, delicious food and safe spaces to be physically active, right? Like the flavor may change, but the underlying conditions are the same. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes. We have a few more questions, and then we may have time at the end. And I have a couple of questions from Marta Cotero, but I'm going to let her ask you those herself after I finish my list of questions.
Yes.
Okay. One of the things that a lot of us we're all in different stages of work and family and challenges in life. So what have been your greatest challenges and disappointments, and how do you handle them? Because with a schedule like yours, there's not a lot of time to really let anything put you down.
So one big challenge, and this is something that I share with each one of the teams that I start a working relationship with, is sadness. I recognize that I am susceptible to depression, and I am blessed that it doesn't come to the point where it's clinical depression, but it is something that it's baseline for me, right? So I know that is a challenge, and over the years, I have developed great relationships with therapists and counselors, and even sometimes confesores, because sometimes what you need is a confessor, right? and my husband knows that when like there's something that's triggering me, I let him know. And I tell him, baby, it's not you. You don't have to fix it. I just want you to know that like I'm entering into a period of sadness, right? So acknowledging that that is real and that that's something that for me is a challenge is a first step. Acknowledging, identifying strategies for doing something about it. And then, like not being afraid to say it, because the worst thing about poor mental health and mental illness is when people don't talk about it in the open. So I will tell you that that's one of the biggest challenges. And it has also been something that I have openly discussed with my 3 teenagers. Oh my gosh, I have 3 teenagers as of a month ago. And that has led to really great conversations about, mental health with each one of my teenagers as they entered the like middle school years, which is like when everything seems to go cray. So that's been a huge challenge for me.
No,
And I think that there was a second part to the question.
How did you handle it? And you did.
Yeah.
No, I have to tell you that in my group of women, none of them will go for help or counseling, and they'll go, it's not in my background. And I remember my mother saying, she was dying and I went to a counselor. She didn't know. And she said, did you tell him anything about me or your father? So coming from that background, I'm just I don't know if you know how important your statement is, because it doesn't have to impact our professional lives or who we are. It really makes it more important and emboldens us to move forward. So thank you for that statement.
You're welcome. Anytime.
Monica asked, how did you, in your career path, what skills did you find were so important to develop? And how did you craft your own growth and development?
I will tell you that one of the most important skills is listening, and listening with your entire body, not just with your ears. So being able to read a room when you enter it, and then position yourself according to the conversation and whatever else is going on in the room before you walked into it, right? So listening with your eyes, listening with your ears, listening with your body, like what dynamics are happening in the room that you're walking in. And that has come in very handy, especially during meetings, because I've been able to identify like who is dominating the conversation, like who is being kept out of the conversation. And it's helped me craft strategies for making my point in a way that people are going to be willing to receive it, right? Like I do not think that one size fits all is true, right? And I will tell you that adapting the way that you enter a conversation is not being a hypocrite. It's not being a chameleon. It's not about being disingenuous. It's about understanding that the world doesn't revolve around you. So stop trying to think like you're the center of the universe, but rather that when you enter into relationship with others, you need to listen and react to whatever dynamics are going on in the room. So by being able to do that, I have been able to work with people who, by other people's standards, have been labeled as difficult. Like I would be the person that would be called to work with, the difficult leader or the difficult supervisor, because I assessed, I listened, and then I like crafted my response or my interaction with that individual based on the conditions in the room or in the conversation as I was entering it. And then that meant that because I developed a keen ear for like what was going on, I could identify opportunities, and I could go like this whenever something that seemed like a good opportunity was not right for me. So very, very quick example, and y'all can take me out for a cup of coffee and I can tell you more details later. I had one job that lasted 9 months. On the second day at the job, I already knew that I wasn't gonna last. I already knew it. And it took me 9 months to find my next opportunity. When you listen and pay attention and you use your entire body to listen, you can gauge when an opportunity is right for growth and for you to follow it. And when the red flags and the X marks start to pop up. Monica, I hope that answers your question, if Monica is still in the room.
I don't know. What about like your skill going into public health, et cetera? Well, how did you make those decisions?
So I did not know I was entering public health until it like smacked me in the face. When I was in undergrad, I was in a dual degree program. It was chemical engineering and microbiology. So, you know, this mixture called Industrial Biotechnology. And I thought that was what I was going to do the rest of my life. But during the time that I was in school, it was early days of the AIDS epidemic. And I got involved through a student organization in doing health education around HIV prevention, around binge drinking, like preventing binge drinking, because in Puerto Rico, drinking is 18. So by the time you get to college, everybody is legally able to drink, right? So we had like a lot of student-led health education programs. And I received so much more joy out of doing work around health education, so much more joy than solving differential equations. A different kind of fun, right? Like it was fun to do that, but the joy was in interactions with people. So when I decided to switch careers and move to public health, I was following the people. Like I needed to be close to people to receive that joy and satisfaction in what I did. And so I went to the University of Connecticut to do my master's. I chose UConn because they had the best financial aid packet. But I was so lucky because when I entered the University of Connecticut and my assistantship required me to do clerical work at the office, I was so lucky that one of my teachers rescued me from clerical work. Not that there's anything wrong with clerical work, but I was not getting a lot of public health experience, you know, looking at applications and filing and writing the newsletter. So she brought me into the Institute for Community Research based in Hartford to work on the development of an intervention for pre-adolescent girls to prevent alcohol, drug, and tobacco use. And I got to work with people, and I got to think about like what makes people tick, right? And how that drives people's decisions. This professor was an anthropologist, a medical anthropologist. So not only did I enter public health, I entered public health from a very different perspective than what most public health professionals enter public health through, right? So a lot of public health folks enter through epidemiology, right? Or they enter through biostatistics, or they enter through like a very clinical way of thinking about public health. I enter through a lens that looked at how social sciences help us understand how health is shaped, right? So it was less about skills that I developed along the way and more about worldviews and frameworks that help me understand the world around me.
Thank you. And now, how do you balance family and career?
All right, I will tell you right now that I know that when I retired, my job is not going to be the one wiping my butt when I get sick. It is going to be my husband. It's going to be my kids. My neighbors are the ones who are going to bring me like baked meatloaf if I get sick. It's not going to be my job. So because of that, I spend a lot of time building community, building relationships, and ensuring that, like, one, that my kids are not going to be talking about me in therapy like 20 years from now. If they're going to talk about somebody in therapy, it's not going to be me. And I spend a lot of time making sure that my husband is not a stranger to me, because we've become parents and we've forgotten that first we were lovers. The parenting thing was like something that came later, right? So I actually wrote in the job that I just left, and I'm gonna bring that with me to the new job. I wrote into my annual performance goals a personal goal that is about spending at least 30 minutes a week with each one of my kids, and at least one meal outside the house with my husband, just he and I, right? And this may sound a little bit like quirky and ridiculous, but if I am not held accountable to it, I'm not going to do it, right? So like I am very intentional about ensuring that at the end of the workday, that I can close my laptop, that I can, take the dog out for a walk with my husband, or like play, Minecraft. I don't play Minecraft with the kids. I'm lying if I told you that. Play board games with the kids. Because I know that at the end of the day, first of all, jobs are temporary. The work that we all are called to do, it does not need martyrs. And, like everything is relative. In 10 years from now, is it gonna really matter if my report was 10 pages or 15 pages? Like, is that really gonna matter when it's time for me to like sit down and retire and relax? So I like that way of thinking is what helps me maintain balance, because it helps me make decisions that are based on the expression that I learned was not being luz de la calle y oscuridad de la casa. Like, I don't want to be a shining bright light outside and be a dim or like a dim light inside my home. I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What do you hope to pass on to your children? Because you're an example of so many different parts of life.
I want them to always ask themselves, what's the most loving thing I can do in this moment? And that they make decisions based on what's the most loving thing that they can do. And sometimes that love is self-love. Like, what's the most loving thing I can do right now that is going to preserve my sanity? It could be like, what is the job decision? Like the decision to leave New York in 2016 was a decision based on love. Like, we left because we wanted to be closer to my parents who were living in Texas at the time, or they're still living in Texas. So I left a job that I loved because the most loving thing I could do in that moment was move to Texas. So I want my kids to measure everything using that. It sounds corny, I know, but it's practical.
And
I promise.
Any other rules or recommendations that you give them?
Oh, well, let me tell you, we have a list. So talking about my kids, like we have a list of, like, right now it's about 23 items that we put together while we were walking one afternoon during the early days of the pandemic. And it is a list of all the things that you need to be able to do before they are, released from this household, right? To go to college, to like go live independently, whatever, like it is, right? So I'm actually looking for it right now because I have it on my phone. And it is a list that every time I tell the story of the list to to people, they're like, oh, have you considered adding this thing? And then I keep adding things. So my kids are probably not very happy, but it's like things from as simple as being able to sew a button, thread a needle and sew a button, to like being able to go grocery shopping and like prepare at least 5 meals that are gonna like hold them, you know, through like a week, to learning how to pray for themselves and for others, being able to make a reservation at a restaurant or a hotel and book a flight, how to use public transportation. I mean, I have the list right here and I will happily share it with you. Like that is something that I hope my kids can check off and not be bitter at me that I made them do all of those things.
Well, actually, I do have a question from someone. Can you share the list?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah. I will send it to Maria, and Maria, you can do like a post meeting, something or the other.
That's great. And now, are there any other messages you have for Comadres as we each go along our own journeys?
So I will say that like it amazes me how people go through the world thinking that they don't need anybody. And I will tell you right now, we all need our comadres. We all need our comadres, right? Like, I'm glad that I have a loving husband. He's great. I'm glad that I have like kids that are, so far, they're respectful and like being encaminados. But like, you need your girlfriends, you need your comadres. You cannot do this alone. And there is something about that sisterhood that is so sacred and important. And so my advice is like, find your people. Find like, this is, I'm so grateful that we have this space. And I'm so grateful to Comadre Nora for having had the foresight 40 plus now years ago to start this network, because we all need a posse. Whatever you want to call it, your posse, your comadres, your sisterhood, we all need that. And with that, there is a sacred bond to not only like suck life and energy out of people, but like pour life and energy into those relationships.
Gracias. Marta, did you want to say a few words, ask a question?
Well, I did have a question. I want to say so much. I agree on the list. We had a similar list. When I first got married, the first thing I did was get a copy of the composition of food. And with the use of the composition of food that the Department of Agriculture first put out, now it's commercially available. I have kept my family, thanks also to good genes, healthy and happy, no chronic illnesses. I'm 80, I'm going to be 85 next month, and my husband's 86, and we're still working and still doing a lot of community work. And I love, but I'll just say one thing, that, yes, skills. And my granddaughter has the skills of 13 grandchildren that I wanted to have, and I don't, I only have one. But she's very skilled at everything. She can lay tile, she can bake, she can cook, everything. Anyway, I did want to say about relationships. Thanks. I love that. I love that. I love that. When my daughter wants to set up a studio art at home in El Paso so that her husband can be closer to us in Austin, thank God for relationships. Every day, work on your relationships, because nothing, no amount of money in the world can replace those wonderful relationships. So a shout out to Eileen, to Monica, to everybody, to Comadre Nora that keeps us connected. That's the most, I think that's the most important thing we can have in the whole wide world. You can survive anything. I survived the murder of my son. Thank goodness to a community and to relationships that lifted us. So I did have a practical question. And during COVID, I'm sure that all of you are aware that the nonprofits benefited very nicely However, we found those of us that do not work through large nonprofits, but through community associations, clubs, organizations that are very, very, very basic, did not benefit. And so because these large nonprofits were actually benefiting their constituents over and over and over and over and over again. And so in the future, it would be wonderful if we could have a pilot program where nonprofits are obliged, large nonprofits, to adopt, grassroots nonprofits to have a relationship with, not to take them over, not necessarily, not even to mentor, but yes, in a way, just to adopt them. And so when there's needs, horrible needs like disasters or COVID or anything, they have further reach into the grassroots through, those nonprofits. Because what happened with Lourdes Zúñiga, and I have to say, it was so helpful because she got her money and then she passed it on to us to help our migrant families that were absolutely not on the map. So I just want to throw that out there as something that I think strategically we really should work on nationally almost.
Marta, thank you.
I agree. I completely agree. And Eileen, if I may, I know we're short on time. So one of the biggest hurdles to being able to do that is that in philanthropy, we make things more complicated than they have to be.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It was like there were a lot of pathways for disbursing funding that got created through as a result of the pandemic that can become standard way of doing business. We don't have to revert back to all the ways of strapping people to a specific organization of nonprofit. Like, we don't need to be only funding nonprofits that look like corporate organizations there, and we do not need to expect an organization that is grassroots to become something that they don't want to be just so that they can receive money. So I agree with you, and if I don't do something about it over the next 2 years, call me out on it. And I have my colleague Lexi in the room who can hold me accountable as well.
I knew
Thank you
that
for-
question. I knew that question would resonate with you, so I waited till the end. But mil gracias, you've been awesome. Thank you so much, and thank you to Maria for hosting this. And Nora, are you here to do the closing?
I am.
Thank you,
Yes.
Doña Nora.
I Comadre Lourdes. You, as
She
usual,
rocked.
you absolutely, your responses were so vulnerable. You showed us your soul in so many ways. And we're grateful to you for sharing all of that growth that you've had, as each position you've taken has had greater responsibilities and you've been able to do more. And now you've come to a position where I believe the doors have opened and there will be an opportunity to do a lot more. Yes. And what I want to say to you is we are here for you. Not only will we hold you accountable, we expect to serve alongside you. So please call on us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
I also want to make
Benedicciones.
a very quick announcement, and that is to tell you all that Lourdes has a wonderful husband. He is a photographer, and he has just published his first book of photography called Mi Sangre. And you can see more of this book, and you might put it in the web, in the link.
I just put it in the chat.
Yeah, misangre.org. And I encourage you to see that, because this is the family that is giving us this amazing leader. And we look forward to working right alongside you, Lourdes, to make a big impact in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Comadre Nora. Thank you.
Well, I think we're about to say good night. And Nora, do you have any other announcements?
Thank you, Comadre, for being here with us. Maria, is there any final words you'd like to add? Because we don't get anything done without Maria. Let me tell you that right now.
Right?
La verdad.
So, I just wanted to remind everyone that, with the December holidays, our next Comadre series in December will be Wednesday, December 21st. And it will be a short one because after that, it's going to be followed by our holiday concert. So please join us on December 21st for a short speaker series and a longer holiday concert. Okay, so everyone have a good night. Take care. Lourdes, thank you for being here. And thank you, Eileen, for a wonderful, interview.
Gracias.
And
Thank you
Dr.
For
all.
having me. Ciao.
Ana Nogales, our secretary, and Teresa Lara, our board, are both here tonight. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
Comadres.
And I just want to tell you, the more you get involved with Comadres, the more meaningful your life becomes.
That's right.
Buenas noches, everybody.
Show up.
Buenas noches.
Buenas noches.
Adiós.
Hi, Patricia.
Thank you.